Yeah. Do you relish change though? Because change is not easy, Adam. And have you actually finished the furniture removal, mate? Because the noise in the background there is really assaulting people's eardrums. Are you settled?
Yes.
Right.
I'm
Goodness
sitting.
me.
I
I was
just, my,
about to make a joke about hemorrhoids and, have you got your hemorrhoid ring kind of seat sorted
it's
so
not
that
to
you're
do with
not
that.
too uncomfortable?
It's not to do with
Because,
that. It's I just decided I want to stand. I want to stand for an hour, but yeah, I couldn't get my stand working in time.
standing for an hour is too much. I find you need to switch between standing and sitting. So I'm kind of doing, when I'm standing, I find myself like kind of bouncing to music and stuff just to keep my spine moving.
Oh, right.
But when I'm talking to people, it's like really struggling. So I got to sit down. So standing and sitting, you got to do two modes, folks. Okay, I think we're live, everybody. We are live. It is Brainfood Live on air, episode 74, bringing it to you every Friday, folks. We have not missed a single one, I think, this year. So we're cracking on and having a great show with great conversations with very smart people. And occasionally people like Adam Gordon supporting me in the seat to host it. So, as ever, quick AV check, everybody. Folks on Crowdcast, great to see the chat stream already firing up. If you can hear me okay, just give me a quick comment to say, Hung, yes, I can hear you. We are multicasting. And by the way, Restream has actually changed a lot. They raised about Series C, $50 million or something. So expect that to suddenly increase my costs to run this show because they're going to pass that on to our consumers. But it has actually made a few sort of step changes. So it could be I screwed this up. So people on LinkedIn, if you can hear me, just do a quick comment below to say, yes, Hung, I can hear you fine. Let me know that AV is fine there. We're also live streaming to the Brainfood Facebook group, 3,000 members there now. So if you can hear me there, give me a quick comment and make sure you can actually, let me just check, am I live there? Yes, I am. Okay, sorry for being completely unprofessional, folks, but you know what? I ain't getting paid for this. So yes, I am unprofessional. But yeah, Facebook Live. I think we're good. Okay, everyone hear me. We're ready to go. Quick word for our sponsors this week. Do you need to take that, Adam? I feel free to take a call.
Switch the sound off.
Yeah, no worries. A quick word for our sponsors this week. Our episode 74 is sponsored by our friends at Video My Job. I don't know whether anybody's used Video My Job before, but they are an awesome product, particularly if you don't have an in-house content team. They have, I think, one of the most user-friendly ways in which you can actually produce employer-branded videos for the recruiting context, whether that's a video job ad or whether it's some sort of engagement product or whether it's just some employer branding you want to do. You can also do it entirely remotely. So I think they've rolled out a new process whereby, previously the assumption was people might be in on-premise and on-site. But these days, Video My Job have actually got a process where multiple people can interact, collaborate, create content, ship it to them, and they will produce it for you. So check out Video My Job. They have actually got a free trial, I believe, or at least it's a demo you can check out. So I'm going to share the demo link on Crowdcast there. Do check them out if you have or have not got any kind of video solution, because obviously you need to have that. You need to have that like 2 years ago, but right now, today, you need to have it. Okay, moving on. We've got a great show lined up today. We're going to be talking about lessons from remote first companies. Everyone is thinking remote now. I think we've got over the shock. A lot of us are working from home on a kind of permanent basis. It looks like companies are giving people a lot of choice, irrespective of what the government came out with today in the UK to say, yeah, get back to the office. I think a lot of companies are going to say, you know what, you can work where you can and where you want. And we've got two guests on the show who are going to really help us understand what recruiting lessons we can learn from companies that have always been remote. So these are Elastic and Gitlab. If you don't know those two companies, you really should, because not only are they remote only, they've been so and successfully so for a long time, but they also produce a hell of a lot of content about how to do remote properly. And we've got Mark Deubel from Elastic, who's the tech recruiter there, going to help us talk through how that impacts recruiting. I'm sure it has a huge impact with regards to process, sourcing, assessment, all the rest of it. We've also got Anastasia Pshegodskaya. I hope I haven't destroyed your name, Anastasia, from Gitlab. And she's going to help us talk it through there as well. So that's going to be happening in a moment. But before we go there, we always review last week's Brainfood, and that's why Adam Gordon is in the hot seat. Adam, have you read the newsletter? Did you read the newsletter last week? And if so, what did you find interesting?
Yeah, I always read the newsletter. And I really enjoyed lots of different aspects to it. I'm trying to understand which are the best ones to talk about, because there was so many good ones this week. Let's talk about that Twitter thread. Chris Hurd's. I know we're going to be talking much more about remote work later, but wow, every single one of them. There was like 20 different predictions.
37, mate.
27 different.
37.
37. Wow.
Yep.
I mean, it was a marathon read, but I mean, they're all really easy to understand, and some of them very, very thought provoking. So I really liked the aspect of the growth of a kind of a different type of location, which is the third space, and the third space being, well, this is not your office, and this is also not your home, but this is somewhere that you can go and work. And his suggestion was that supermarkets and places like that should make use of some of their space for you to go and do that. And it would be a really smart thing to do. I actually know somebody who's bought a load of disused pubs as a result, in order to create a place for people to go and just touch down and work. That was one I really liked. Yeah.
That the reinvention of retail space, I think, is going to be a big part of this, because obviously the old idea of just having a shop and relying on foot traffic to sell your goods, that's got to be the worst idea ever now. You've got to provide something else, and you've got to provide, as you say, this concept of the walk-in. There's a space to work. Maybe that's not the sole purpose of the space, but it's there if you need it. I had a chat yesterday with Adam Posner, a great podcast out of New York. He was in a similar type of space. He's 10 minutes away from his office, but he said, I just need to get out of the house. So it wasn't so much an efficiency thing for him. It was more a case of you needed to change of environment. You needed to have more focus, and you needed to change the general sort of vibe of where he was. So I think, there's going to be more of a kind of a distributed working style, isn't it? And instead of locking everyone, this is purely work or this is purely retail, it's going to just be a mass mashup of everything. So could be very interesting.
A couple of other quick aspects of that one I wanted to just mention were the concept of offices being distraction factories, and actually we probably should get used to more asynchronous work. I do appreciate that, and I agree with that. The rise of hobbies was just another one where absolutely people are taking up more hobbies again because they've actually got a bit more time. They're not traveling as much, and so and I've got to be honest. I've actually got to know the location that I live in. This part of Glasgow is called Pollock Shields, and I've actually got to know Pollock Shields better in the last 4 or 5 months. There's things about it I just didn't know at all. One more was the element of constant presence, and the in gaming. There's the concept of the like open mic, where anybody just can talk to each other in the game that they're playing, and you don't have to sit and have a conversation. You're not talking about anything in particular, but you can sit there and you can, if you want, say things. And I have often wondered if it would be a good idea in a team to just have Zoom open the whole time. You're not having a meeting, but if you just need to talk to the person, you can just speak. Things like that. So I thought that was that was an incredible sequence of tweets.
Do you know what? Stack Overflow, our friends at Stack Overflow used to do that. I'm not sure they still did, but they were very, very early on in having this radical transparency view of we're just going to live stream our office. And everyone can watch that. If you want to watch it, watch it. We don't care. It's not about confidentiality or whatever. But you can just see the operation of the thing, so that you know what's going on. Stack Overflow obviously have now turned into, a recruiting product really, but they started off as a community support Q&A site. So they wanted to be very close to their community. Hence, transparency was a big part of what they were doing. And I suspect companies that do a lot of this distributed well also are ones that have strong community vibe or strong community approach in other respects. So in other words, there's a lot of people that use their products that aren't just consumers. They're also maybe fans or enthusiasts of the product in some way. And there's a slightly different relationship from a person who simply uses that service. It's not like with respect to, say, an old school bank, with respect to Barclays, no one's going to be a fan of Barclays, right? It's like a totally transactional experience. It is a bank. It does banking for you, and that's it. But you're not going to aggregate. You're not going to go around and create a community around your usage of Barclays. But that does happen with certain products and companies. And I just wonder, going forward, when you're creating a company, like, can you create fandom out of your consumers? Because if you're able to do that, then you might be in a very strong shape. But anyway, that tweet stream by Chris Hurd, it was fantastic. I've just shared that Twitter thread, should I say, in the chat stream. Go and check that out, and do follow Chris. He's only got like 10,000 followers or something. That surprises me. Like, he seems to be a guy that people should be paying a lot more attention to, because he is sharing his thoughts on remote working. I think he's got a remote working product, so he's got a deep thinking behind it, as well as a vendor side view of it. But he had some really interesting things to say. So check it out.
He did say one of the others he said was the emergence of bad tech, and what he meant was technology that's being built by people that actually think they can make a load of money out of the fact that people are remote working, rather than having an actual passion for this as a subject. And I read that and I just went, yes, recruitment's absolutely rammed with companies that have done that.
Right, 100%. Yeah. But anyway, follow this guy. He's definitely got at least some good tweets. Okay, cool. What else, man?
So I really enjoyed Toby Culshaw's, I guess, sort of unveiling of what really is talent intelligence all about. Because I think most people think it's kind of recruitment research, like exec search type information, but it's all about enabling companies with the information to make really great business decisions from not just from a people perspective, but from a where should you put your factory, where should you what jobs should be remote versus jobs that people should be together, and things like that. And it's real deep research that talent intelligence team at Philips does, and presumably he's moving on somewhere else, and they will do as well. There's not that many companies that have this kind of unit, but it's very, very strategic, and it's not really about recruitment. It's certainly not about recs.
Well, it's emerging from that, and I think Toby's post, which I've just shared in the chat stream there, is kind of a call to action for talent intelligence professionals, but also recruiting in general. We need to expand our scope beyond this idea of, where are the candidates. You've really got to think at a business level to say, strategically, where do we actually distribute our working population? What should it look like? And there's all kinds of cascade effects of that decision making. So at root, I think talent intelligence is quote unquote talent mapping. Some boss might say, we need to hire 500 developers. Where is the best place to set up an office? And you would go out and do the research. That would be probably your classic talent intelligence project. What Toby is saying is that actually we need to get much bigger and deeper than that. And to your point, and probably some stuff we'll talk on with Anastasia and Mark later, like what style, what flavor of remote, what is it going to be, a mix of, how does the local talent kind of influence the flavor of remote we're going to try. All of these things are significant. So yeah, Toby Culshaw, great person to follow, great Brainfooder. He wrote a great post there, and yeah, good luck, Toby, on your next move, because I do believe he's moving on from Philips actually. So
Yeah,
Yep.
To an extremely important company for the world. But anyway,
Yep.
so 21 HR jobs of the future from Harvard Business Review.
Okay.
I mean, some of those are pretty logical, but some of them were pretty crazy sounding, and I'm really interested to learn more about them. So the job of a genetic diversity officer, yeah, it's an interesting one. I've never heard it described like that before. A distraction prevention coach. Wow, what a job that is! I mean, that's a counsellor, isn't it? That's a psychologist, I think, something like that. Chief purpose planner, yeah, that's a good one. Gig economy manager, that's another good one. Probably the one that I found the most interesting is the VR immersion counsellor.
Right.
So I suspect that's somebody who helps you to really understand how to really feel better about VR and how to make use of it better and not feel sick and all those types of things.
Can I tell you on that last point? I'm invited to the Global HR Summit. I think I'm on a panel with Lars Schmidt on this, and it is an alternative reality event. And I've had to go and buy an Oculus set, which they've refunded, but it cost me about 800 quid in order to participate as a speaker at this event. And I tell you something, my first experience with AR VR, it is absolutely remarkable. The immersive kind of sense, it's as big a phase shift as black and white TV to color TV, in my view. It's really shockingly different. And once you're in there, so long as everything's working okay, you do want to stay in there. It's like very addictive because you can start performing actions that you generally can't perform right now. You can run around, you can fly around, you can do all that type of stuff. So super interesting experience. And that blog post, which I've just shared by HBR, I thought super ambitious. They, usually Harvard Business Review is quite an austere publication. Don't like to speculate too much, but they've gone for it in this case, and they've said, right, what's happening in 2030, and listed a bunch of jobs there, which I thought was great speculation. So please do check it out. Although my caveat to all of this is that all of those jobs were contingent on the persistence of a company being a primary way in which we're going to organize work. And I would like to explore, we'll do another show on this, like the potential disaggregation of a company, because it may be there's another way in which we can access services and deliver services without having to go under the umbrella of an organization in order to do that. So that's a fascinating topic. But anyway, topic for another time. Let's move on to our core topic today, which is recruiting lessons from remote. Don't know about you, but I don't know too much about this because I don't know. I've basically been an on-premise person most of my recruiting career, so I don't think I've ever recruited anybody remote off the bat. Definitely have never recruited anybody for a remote only business. I'm approaching this very much as a enthusiastic amateur, but I'd love to know from practitioners how it all works. How about you, man? Have you had any experience of this? Or
yeah, I have. When I started working for myself in 2009. Within 6 months, I'd hired 4 people. I think there was 5 of us, and we worked remote right through till 2012 for about 3 years. And we met up at a coffee shop in Glasgow called Bean Scene pretty regularly, and we sat there for a few hours, did some work together a couple of times a week. But mostly we were communicating by phone, and so I have done it.
Remote.
I mean, this is a long time ago.
Imagine remote working and doing it by phone.
I know. This is 11 years ago.
Just have a think about that, folks. I mean, remote working now, at least we have the internet. But imagine doing remote working without the internet. That's absolutely insane. How can you do that?
It wasn't without the internet. This is 11 years ago. I mean, we had a pretty strong internet. It was more so we didn't have Zoom and we didn't have things like we didn't have ways of talking online like that.
Yeah, you couldn't do video. You couldn't do all this type of stuff either. So
Skype existed. It just wasn't very good.
Skype was just terrible. It still is terrible.
Still terrible.
Yeah. And there we are. There's Anastasia. Anastasia, how are you doing?
Great.
Great
today
stuff.
I'm in a standing mode. Thanks. Excited.
Yeah, and there's Mark as well. Mark, it's rather sunny there. Shouldn't it be rainy in the Netherlands at the moment?
No, we're kind of lucky today. Yesterday was a totally different story.
Yeah, that looks like paradise. Anyway, for the people who don't know you, Anastasia, can you please just quickly introduce yourself, who you are, and what do you do?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm the sourcing manager at Gitlab. And if you're not familiar with our product, so Gitlab is basically the whole DevOps lifecycle products, which helps developers to build their own software. And almost from day one, we've started this company as an all-remote company, which means that we don't have any physical office worldwide, and even our headquarters in San Francisco is like a remote space for our CEO. So that's briefly about GitLab. So currently we have 1,300 team members worldwide, and they are located in more than 65 countries, I believe. So I need to check this number because we are growing pretty fast, but yeah, I'm sure that we are close to 70 countries.
That's amazing. Great stuff. And Anastasia, I hope I didn't murder your name, by the way, when I tried to pronounce it.
I never book tables in restaurants my real surname. So yeah, you've done great.
Great stuff. Okay, and Mark, for the people who don't know you, can you quickly introduce yourself and who you are and what do you do?
I live in the Netherlands. Last time we spoke, I was still in Spain, I guess, on the beach. So this is
Barcelona.
Yeah, Barcelona. So we moved back, the whole COVID thing. I've worked remote with Elastic since the start. Elastic is a distributed company from the start. Just basically the same as GitLab, right? We started fully distributed. We do have some offices around the world. What you will see is especially HR and salespeople like to go into an office. It's a typical thing. You won't see any engineers there. So we do provide some of them. At the moment, they're all closed due to the whole situation in the world. But basically, we're a distributed team. And even when you go to an office, you won't meet your own teammates most of the time, right? Because we're all distributed throughout those countries, 18 time zones. So that's basically what we do. As for software, what we actually do as a company, if you use Uber, Tinder, if you shop online, the chances are that you're actually using our search technology on the back end there.
Yeah, fantastic. Good stuff, you two. I mean, let's get into the topic. I think the reason why people wanted to pay attention to us is because I came up with the idea that, a lot of companies now have had to force themselves away from an on-premise way of working to at least a remote-friendly, in many cases, a remote only. So they've had to shockingly make this shift. In many cases, it's traumatic for them. But now the trauma's kind of over. Maybe they're starting to retool and rehire and do those types of things again. I just thought maybe it'd be useful to get a couple of recruiters from remote-only businesses to share, what kind of lessons have you learned that makes remote hiring different from on-premise hiring. And I'm assuming you might have worked correct me if I'm wrong, but have you worked as an on-premise recruiter before you joined GitLab and joined Elastic? So go to you first, Anastasia. Have you had experience of a before and after of this?
Yeah, so I would say like my first step to like remote was when I was working at Dell, I believe like 5 or 6 years ago. So I worked in a distributed team and I had an opportunity to work from home, let's say like, I don't know, like half of my work week. Then when I was at Uber, like I wasn't working remotely, but at the same time when it was about interviewing and finding talent. So all our interviews were on remote base, and usually we would invite only like the final candidate to our office to see like our executive team and just get familiar with the office space. And yeah, so that was my experience. I've never worked all remote, like fully remotely before I joined GitLab. So definitely for me, that was like a new learning curve.
What was the big difference between, I mean, even though, it sounds like Dell and Uber were fairly advanced already at that point. I think most technology companies are actually. But what was the difference that you felt going from let's say, a mixed environment to a completely remote environment? Was there anything specific that you can mention?
Yeah, I would say perhaps like the biggest change that I experienced in my first days at Gitlab is that usually when you work for a global distributed company, you're still tied to a specific region. Let's say like it's EMEA, APAC, Americas, and you don't have a chance, first of all, to recruit folks from these big regions that are outside of your own, and you don't have a chance to meet with your colleagues who, let's say, are sitting in the United States if you're based in Moscow. So that was like the biggest change in my mind, because like I joined GitLab recruiting team when it was a team of 5, but still we had folks in the United States, in South Africa, and we had some synchronous calls. We had our coffee chats, which was amazing because I learned a lot about like hiring in different locations. It's not an eye opener than finding, I don't know, like a salesperson in Moscow differs a lot from finding someone in Tokyo or Japan. So yeah, for me, that was like the biggest shock I experienced when I joined.
Yeah, so it's almost like geographical and time zone becomes irrelevant, increasingly recedes in relevance, because the company is baked in as, look, we're just going to service the entire planet 24/7 anyway. It's not like a traditional bank that shuts its operations on a week. I'm still stunned at this. It's like you try to process a transfer of cash or something. I'll come in on Monday. You think, what? Like we are now, we can't tolerate this type of gap. And obviously GitLab and Elastic, I would say in both cases, there's never a downtime. So perhaps if the company is geared to deliver services in this way, it makes sense for the entire business also to follow the rhythm of the service, really. So that's very interesting. How about you, Mark? I mean, from your experience transitioning from an on-premise recruiter, if that has been your experience before, I believe it has, to a remote-only recruiter, what's been the learning for you there, Mark? Well, I think we might have lost them.
It's raining in The Hague, so maybe he's just got drenched.
You know what? I did see him look at the sky, and then he suddenly froze. So I wonder whether he's been struck by, something terrible meteorologically. Anyway, Mark, I hope you're okay, and if you are, please do chime in. But let's move on. In any case, another one of the really interesting posts that was in the Brainfood last week was a post on the heterogeneous implementation of remotes. I don't know whether you picked this one up, guys, but this fellow, I forget his name, Victor somebody, but he wrote about and he was criticizing the kind of the binary division we seem to be going down, where certain people are saying, look, the new future is already here, everyone has to be remote only, anybody who doesn't do this is left behind. And then the other side is, look, remote only is a fad. Everyone needs the office, psychologically better. What about the kids? We're going to go back to normal. And what this guy, Victor, is saying is actually, no, it's going to be just a spectrum of implementations in between those two extremes. And we're all going to experiment. And I love his term, the heterogeneous implementation of remote. So in other words, there's multiple flavors of this. It's not just chocolate and vanilla. It is the entire sort of availability there. And I just wonder what your thoughts are for a company that has been on-premise first. Does it make sense to go like halfway, or should they go like rip the bandage off, just jump straight in? Thoughts on that? Adam, feel free to chime in as well.
Yeah,
I think.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I just want to. I've really got one quick thing to add about this, which is I asked my team. It's not a big team. There's 16 people. Would you prefer to work from home? Would you prefer to work from the office, or would you prefer an everyday choice? And they all said an everyday choice. That's only 16 people, but I really believe if you want the very best, very best people that you could attract as an organization, and you want to remove any limits to who you can hire, the best thing is to be able to offer the two options. However, I'm really interested to know from Anastasia what the business benefit is to GitLab of not actually having any offices at all and not offering that.
Yeah, that's a great question. And before I answer this one, so I would say that like during this whole pandemic situation, we had a chance to consult quite a lot of companies in terms of like how they can transition to this remote environment. And usually we are trying to warn companies about like having this hybrid model when you have, let's say, like one team who's still sitting in the office and then another team who's like remote, because this would create a silo. Like you can't avoid it, especially if like, let's say the recruiting team, half of the recruiting team is sitting in one office. This would mean that people who are all remote, they'll miss out something just because, you know, like there is always a coffee chat, a cooler talk. So I would say that perhaps, you know, like here we are fans, and for a reason, we are fans of like this radical way of like going like all remote. For sure there will be some transition period, because even if you think about like all the costs of adapting your infrastructure, your systems, like purchasing perhaps new software to make sure to enable your team members to work remote, it takes some time, it costs money. But in terms of the benefits of being all remote, and especially the benefits of the recruiting team, so first of all, like the whole world becomes your talent pool. Of course, this requires a lot of diligence, and luckily we have like a really mature people ops team who's helping us to understand like local laws and how we can hire people in different locations, because that's the whole another story. But basically, when we have a new opening, a new rack, so we can hire anywhere, and this helps you in terms of driving company efficiency, because, you know, location factors and cost of living in different areas vary a lot. So usually we are trying to be frugal in the approach that we are hiring. And since I'm leading the sourcing team, so my team is specifically focused on sourcing best talent worldwide, especially in efficient cost location areas. Together with that, again, this provides you with the best talent you can find. So again, there are no boundaries, and, you know, like you can go straight to the best performers and leaders of the industry. And in terms of like the switch for the team members, again, like when I think about transitioning to remote, and it's not related to recruiting, but it's also about like facilities that you create for your team members. And from the early beginning, Gitlab is offering like all office equipment. I don't know, like first laptop, like chair, a table, like whatever you need to feel comfortable in your home space. And even if you feel that home space is not necessarily the place where you want to work for like multiple reasons, we also reimburse co-working spaces for our team members. So this is how we approach this transition and how we help some of the team members who've never worked remotely before to adjust to this all remote environment. Because I believe that, you know, like whenever you switch from the office to your all remote, like, or your home space, this is a huge shock. It might be overwhelming, like you're all alone, you're left to your own devices. There are some expectations from your manager, but you don't really have someone sitting behind you who can help you like 24 hours a day. So, I mean, like, there are a lot of pros and cons in terms of like costs, and like the transition period might be painful, but I believe at the end that the future of the world is remote. I've been saying this for quite some time, but yeah, who could have expected that this day will come that soon?
Yeah, it's just rapidly arrived on our doorstep, hasn't it? And we've got Mark back, which is great to see. Great to see you there, Mark. But just to address you mentioned a really interesting point, Anastasia, particularly about the existence of a people ops team. When you have a genuine global recruiting requirement or capability, you can't expect your sources or your recruiters to know the local laws. So you're saying you have a team that basically deals with all of the compliance issues and all of the other kind of stuff that can support the recruiter make the decision as to where to actually locate the job, or indeed where to start the sourcing process.
Yeah, absolutely. That's correct. And together with that, for example, we have some countries where we can't hire for now. And again, you can find them on our handbook page. So handbook is basically our website that describes almost every process that we have at GitLab. But
great resource, by the way. Anastasia, I need you to share that in the link chat stream a bit later. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So again, we have some countries where we can't hire, but we constantly trying to figure out what are our opportunities there. I believe that sometimes our people ops team also brings some external consultants because again, this world is big. We have team members in almost 70 countries, and it's really hard for a team of 10 people to learn all the differences and all the nuances of employment somewhere. But yeah, I would say that with their growing popularity of remote work, we see more and more companies that actually can help you to hire people in multiple locations. And I believe that's a good moment to mention. For example, we've recently started looking at our partnership with remote.com, which was founded by our former VP of product, and they actually help companies to hire worldwide and they serve as a layer between, let's say, GitLab and employees and team members to make sure that we provide flawless experience and we are 100% aligned to local legislation.
That's really interesting. I think that's probably a possible evolution, in fact, of companies that do go remote is actually the evolution of the function like this, because I can imagine, again, it's a further recession of this idea of the 360 recruiter that does everything from start to finish, owns the entire job. That's the kind of recruiting I used to do, but it might not be tenable to do that when you have to negotiate kind of unexpected parts of the job. You don't know where this great talent is coming from. You can't then suddenly be expected to learn about the local notice period laws there, or whatever it is. You need someone else to help you support that. So that's super interesting. Okay.
I just wanted to say, Anastasia, when you're talking, I've literally we're now at the end of August. We've been locked down for so long. I've only just realized how much of a culture shock it's been for so many people. I've worked for myself since 2009. I haven't had a manager or been in an office, and I hadn't actually appreciated anything about what it might be like to work outside at home or somewhere where you don't have a team around you, because I'm absolutely used to it, and I've only just realized. So thank you, because I hadn't appreciated it until now.
Yeah.
That's awful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say that, when the whole pandemic break out, we felt that we are prepared for it like no one else. We already had all the systems set up. We are all remote from the early beginning. But together with that, there are other challenges that again are mostly related to HR. But people tend to take less vacation. They tend to stay at work for more hours just because they have nothing else to do. So this is something that we've started working on at GitLab, making sure that, for example, we introduced Friends and Family Day when the whole company officially shuts its doors, let's say for 24 hours, and no one is working, to make sure that you can purely focus on your friends, family, dearest and nearest ones. But yeah, this is something to appreciate. So
that's a great cultural innovation. And Mark, by the way, I've just muted you whilst we're talking because I think there's a lot of background noise there, but we'll bring you back on as soon as we can. This cultural innovation emerging from here. So what's really interesting for me is that, even companies like GitLab that started as a remote-only business, when they're dealing with the permanence of this in many respects as a default, it's not a perfect sort of endpoint. It's not, we are now all remote. That's the end of the story. We're all still on an evolving journey in terms of how all of this works. And I love the idea of having kind of a friends and family day, because one of the truths I think of working in a business is that your fellow employees oftentimes inadvertently create work for you. because they want stuff from you, or they're blocked in some way. They email you or Slack you a message and say, "Oh, Anastasia," or "Hey, Mark, have you got this?" And then suddenly you have to go and get that, which you don't mind doing, but that's an extra 5 minutes. And if you get a couple of those, every hour, that's how your time bleeds away. So if you have to lock it down, shut it down, that's the only way to really get the free time. Okay, I'm going to bring Mark back on because there's a certain question I want to ask him. Let's get it to recruiting, right? How do we understand a candidate is remote ready? Because I do want to tackle this grasp this nettle, because we might want to play the very inclusive game and say, hey, listen, everyone is ready to do this. But I think the reality is that some people are going to be better at being remote than others, mainly based on their own personal lifestyle situation. And I just wonder whether that is a factor in how you recruit, because then that brings in all kinds of interesting D&I questions and assessment questions and stuff like that. So, Mark, I hope you managed to hear that. So I'm going to ask you the question and get you off mute.
Cool. So first of all, my laptop crashed, so that happened. Perfect timing. So I'm on my phone. I hope the audio is a little bit okay. But
yes, perfect. Actually,
so now how to check that is cool. So how to check that is actually pretty difficult. No, sorry. How to check that is actually pretty difficult. So what we mostly do is while doing the interviews, we make sure that we ask questions like, so what kind of projects did you lead? What kind of projects are you working on? And try to figure out if they're the standalone kind of person or if they're always somebody that needs guidance, right? And especially in the end of the interview, we always give time for people to ask questions, right? And one of the questions that we ask them just before that moment is, how do you feel about remote working? And you kind of it's a very simple question, right? But from the questions they ask back, that's where you actually get the feeling of, hey, this is a person that actually understands it. These are the pros, these are the cons. Or they actually say, hey, I don't know. Tell me about it. And that discussion actually is the base layer for, okay, this person can take it or not. So it's very hard because I was never a remote worker. This was the first one for me. I come from a very strict military regime. And then you go...
Why does every Dutch person, every Dutch recruiter I speak to is served in the military? Why is this? It's generally quite a peaceful nation for the last several hundred years, but for some reason they're all like tooled up in the military.
I know, we have no life.
No, so this is like, I remember going to a conference 2 years ago in New York, and we were talking about remote work, and one of the people giving a talk there said he didn't recruit anybody, and he was not a recruiter, he was a CEO of a remote business. And his rule was he didn't recruit anybody who didn't previously have a remote experience. So it was a very hard line. He simply said, look, it's so different in terms of experience. The UX is so different that even though I might label a job in the same way, this person needs to fully, viscerally understand what remote working and remote only is, meaning there is no drinks on Friday after work. There is no kind of cooler talk, let's go make the team coffee. There is no chit chat about the football over the desk. All of those types of things that, we might be missing, or we might be thinking that, it is causing us some difficulty psychologically, mental health issues and so on, that come from people who are used to remote. This guy was saying, you know what? I understand all of this is true, but it has an impact on the business because the person doesn't know because they haven't done it. We're just going to recruit the person who has worked remote before. It was one of his first bullet points. I was shocked. But then I understood the why, because it was a risk mitigation for him, It was his attempt to say 50-50 chance this person's going to take it or not take it. And it's too high a risk for me running a 100-man business. I'm not running a 10,000-man business where I've got HR, recruitment support, all the rest of it. He's running effectively a successful entrepreneurial business. He just needs ready-to-go people that are low maintenance and don't need that additional support. But hello, huge D&I problem there, don't we? I mean, this is like opening up solving one problem and then creating another. So I'd be interested to know what you guys think about that.
So I kind of get it on one hand, but he's limiting his own talent pool. The thing is that on forehand, it's quite hard to predict if somebody will be successful, right? It's always a little bit of a gamble, to be honest. But that's where the complication comes in. It's not the recruitment side; it's the onboarding side, it's the guidance side. They hired me. I never did remote. Hell, I had to report in at 9 a.m. sharp, right? I was always living on base, so this is completely different. And I'm not the only one. A lot of people are very successful in distributed, but it's not something that you can actually see on the resume or have to expect. Oh, they work remote, so they're successful. That doesn't really even count. A lot of people work remote and they make 16 hours, 17 hours, 18 hours a day. What's not needed? Are they successful? Do they know how to work remote? Or are they so scared that by working remote, that by working more hours, they hope that they can still get in their numbers, right? So it's more about onboarding. It's more about guiding people into the process. It's about how do you set up your company from the start on. A lot of people went remote in these times, and they started with, okay, we're sending people home, we're giving them a tool like Slack, and good luck. But it's more than that. It's building this communication charters. It's building an environment. It's changing the complete company culture. If you have that culture, then you can basically hire somebody that's not equipped for it in the beginning, because they will learn. They will get that guidance.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. So, and these days, of course, has the person worked remote before? This guy needs to change his view, because everyone can now say yes to that. But to your point, Mark, there's no evidence. There is definite variability as to people's performance. And Adam, you've actually raised a very important question in the chat stream, which I'd like you to ask on air. But just before I do that, if anybody does have any questions and are watching on Crowdcast right now, please do ask the question in the Ask a Question function at the bottom of the screen, and we'll get to those towards the end of the show. But Adam, go ahead and ask your question. I think it's a very valid one.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of there's a number of companies, of course, that apply a remote first or remote only opportunities. And if you've got an elderly parent that you're looking after at home, or you have got kids, or you've got somebody who has disabilities that you have at home, then your home space is probably far less suitable than other people's might be. So I wonder if there's a clear discrimination problem with that. Mark says no. Let's find out what Mark.
Yes, I can't unmute. My app just keeps blocking everything. So there are solutions for that. At Elastic, we made a solution for those people that we said, hey, we're going to contribute to a WeWork space or something like that, right? So they actually can work from a bar or a cafe. You don't have to be at home. I've done recruitment from the beach, right? So on a daily basis outside is a little bit hard, but they can actually go to a collaborative workspace.
You know what? I just want to underline your point. Remote working is not work from home.
Yeah.
Work at home is one setting for remote, but there could be multiple settings, and those settings can change. So to your point, Adam, if the person doesn't have the home environment where they can't perform, then if the company is able to provision something, like for instance, credits for a co-working space, or just give them a discount on a coffee shop or something, then that replicates an office environment, really, in the sense they're out of the home and they can perform as approximately as to an office as they can. Yeah.
Although, interestingly, Chris Hurd said in one of his tweets that he firmly predicts that companies like WeWork will cease to exist because co-working is not something that is going to be needed anymore. So
I agree,
that,
100%.
But he also said the rise of the third space. So
these might be, but
smaller,
Adam,
more local.
Yeah, and they might be informal sort of spaces. You imagine 18 months down the line, everyone's rolled out 5G. There probably isn't going to be any spot on the street where you couldn't actually effectively get online. And if that's the case, then it suddenly opens up all kinds of spaces to potentially do some remote working. So yeah, I think there's going to be a kind of convergence of these types of trends that will unlock it. WeWork, I think we're in, I mean, well done, the guy who set it up and managed to exit with $1 billion or whatever. Like, people criticize him, but he's walked away with a lot of money.
Clever guy, that's for sure.
He's
very
absolutely
clever.
nailed it. And he nailed it before COVID hit. He's like, oh my goodness, what is the timing of that? But I agree, a co-working space, WeWork's model was always that, like a transition, if you like. A young company would want to come in pre-office, like your company, Adam, pre-office with user WeWork, but they'll eventually get an office. That was the idea. But if the office is not in game anymore, then it takes away the destination. And if you take away the destination, maybe the journey becomes pointless. Okay.
Yeah, just one thing to add to this, because I definitely agree with what Mark mentioned, but together with that, for me, this is exactly the point when asynchronous communication comes in, because if you have, again, children to take care of, I don't know, your parents, etc. So at Gitlab, we don't expect immediate replies from any of our team members, and this starts from the respect of other working hours, and like you're free to block part of your day to go to a gym, like whenever you want to go, and like whatever you need to do, and then come back to work when it's convenient to you and like finish your stuff. So I see that Mark is nodding. I believe that's also a principle at Elastic. So yeah.
It's one of the foundational themes of effective remote working is the prioritization of asynchronous communication to synchronous communication, which I think a lot of people who are very good at synchronous communication get very frustrated by. But ultimately, when you're distributed and remote, you've got other stuff going on. We are not in the office environment where it's like a controlled environment. We are at home. A kid might come in. An Amazon delivery might occur. Something is going on. Mark might get shooed out of the park. That kind of stuff goes on. In which case, a synchronous moment like the one we're having now may not be the right way to try and force people to do. I think this is actually one of the reasons why, even pre-COVID, why the telephone call kind of declined in favor of chat and text, because it demanded synchronicity. If I called someone, I was insisting on synchronicity on the receiver. I was saying to you, Anastasia, I insist you change your day and take this call. And it was rude. Rude for me to impose without checking in some way first, are you available to do that? Which is why we stopped answering the phone. And if you have any kid at the age of 16, 18, whatever, they're not answering your call because you're demanding synchronous. I did. Forget it.
Didn't all. I answer the phone every time it rings. It could be the Queen phoning to offer me a knighthood.
It never is.
It could be.
Here's the news, Adam. It never is, mate.
No, but you just don't know what's on the other end of the phone.
I do. It's not the Queen.
Well, it depends who it is. Right enough. Yes.
I mean, I tell you what, if the Queen started making Dial 9, it would be an awesome way to end her reign, because you know what, it would be like a thrilling thing for that sort of octogenarian who actually picks it up and has a chat. But sorry for being massively ageist there. But the truth of the matter is, the phone call is finished. I think COVID absolutely nukes it. You can't be calling people and expecting them to pick up. I honestly think with the shift of to remote, it really does make the messaging primary. That's the synchronous as you can get is the message through a messaging app, WhatsApp, Slack, whatever, and an email for that slower kind of demand type of message to say, I need you to do this. And then, hopefully you'll find the time to go ahead and actually do that.
Can we ask Laura's question? What about the mental health impacts of working from home?
Give me a sec. Where was that question?
On the chat on Crowdcast, one of the 10 places that you're streaming this.
Has she actually? Oh yeah.
No, it's in the chat.
It's in the chat. Okay, you need to ask it in the thing, but I won't be a complete ass because I want to be fair. Let's answer the question for Laura, but absolutely, we're going to get to the three people who've asked the question in the chat app. Mental health. I think yes, problematic for people who are used to and enjoy the office environment. I think definitely there's an issue there. And the caveat on this, in my opinion, is that there was plenty of people that had mental stress in the office. That's not like some sort of mental health paradise for people. It was very, very stressful for a lot of people. We ignored them. We thought, toughen up. So I think some people will suffer with the change. Some people will benefit from it. But I'll be interested to know what Mark and Anastasia think on this.
Yeah, and I was looking for the page in our handbook, and I'll just link this in chat. But yeah, basically, especially when the pandemic started, we started thinking about like how we can better support our team members in terms of their mental health. So I already mentioned our Friends and Family Day. Together with that, we started like a trial of an app that helps you with meditation and etc. And again, it was one of the company benefits that we offer to our team members. Together with that, we are trying to pay a lot of attention to informal communication. So we recently had like Bring Your Kids to Work Day, where like our executive team were the hosts for this event for kids when they were like coloring, our tanuki logo and etc. So I believe like in these hectic days, we need just to pay attention to like not only doing our jobs and making sure that we hit all the targets and we are aligned to our business expectations, but we also that we are all humans and we think about our team members as human beings as well. So yeah, I linked the page in the handbook. Like there is tons of information there. So yeah, please check it out.
Yeah, fantastic. A quick one on this question for you, Mark. Mental health. Working from home, or should we say remote working, let's get the language right, is bad for mental health. How do you respond to that?
So it depends again on how the company deals with it, right? So if you expect people to work exactly the same way as they worked in an office, it's not going to work. So things like Anastasia already said, like letting people schedule their own day, those are actually beneficial for their mental health. But it's also small things like we use Slack as an internal communication tool, right? So we have about, let's say, 1,000 channels for work, but we have about 2,000 or 3,000 for anything else but work. And then you're talking about always on channels where people just can join each other and have a chat, a Zoom chat. We have channels about biking, about computers, about baking. And you actually see that people relieve themselves a little bit over there, because normally you talk to your colleagues in the office, right? And by actually making all those channels available and everybody can set one up, you actually replicate that whole office feeling. And it's the same for sort of a water cooler effect. You actually build a channel where everybody can join and everybody can say their piece. And that helps with a lot of stress because you're inclusive.
So that's actually a really good technique. So essentially, you set up a Slack channel where it's all comers and all topics, and this is the water cooler. This is the kitchen in the office. Anybody can just grab anybody there. You might just wander through, or there might be something you set up and say, "Oh, we're talking about this here," and then you have different channels, topic specific, that are and you divide them. Work here, non-work here, so people can select if they're interested or want to just take a break. They can wander through some of these channels and interact with other people as a result of that. So, yeah, not quite the same as over the desk, but it never will be the same. But it is also a way of social interaction, which is I think very, very important. Okay, we've only got a couple of minutes left, folks. I want to just hit these questions as I've asked people to ask them, and I'm going to go through them right now. So give me a sec. I'm going to mute you just a moment. We're going to go with, here's a good one from, is that Lee Candioti? I think it is. No, it's not. It's Elkanah Mbiti. Elkanah saying, how do I stand out in a remote position interview when I am from a traditional setup with little knowledge of how remote works, but with an incredible knowledge of the craft I am recruiting for? So in other words, she's saying in an in-person scenario, I would be able to communicate my expertise, but in a remote environment, she's not entirely, I think it's a she, not entirely comfortable doing that. Anastasia, let me give this one to you. How would you advise Elkanah on how to deal with this?
Yeah, so first of all, I would say that like remote interviews require us to level up our game, because it's truly harder for a recruiter, first of all, to assess your skills, because you don't see body language, you don't have this handshake moment, and etc. And it's also harder for candidates because you can never rely on technologies. And, like just having a Zoom call or, I don't know, perhaps Skype call brings a lot of anxiety already. So again, I believe Mark already mentioned this, but when we assess for remote opportunity, first of all, we are interested in your skills, in experience that you bring, and what kind of culture add you bring to the team, rather than your experience of like being all remote. And I'm sure that pretty soon, like most of the people will gain this experience of remote workers. And for us as Gitlab, this is also like a new challenge, because before that, one of our like main like talent brand pillars was that we are all remote, and now we have to think how to differentiate ourselves from other companies. So yeah.
Really good answer, Elkan. I hope I've answered Anastasia's answered the question there for you. By the way, what I'm going to do is share in the chat stream a link to remote working in the Brainfood Larder. There's about 150 different resources in there. Some of them I'm sure will be helpful for you if you are interviewing for jobs that are now remote only, that previously were on premise, and you don't have the remote experience specifically that they may be looking for. That could be useful for you. Okay, I'm going to go through it. We're going to go for Anthea's question. Anthea, okay, let's get to it. What were the surprising ways the pandemic has impacted remote first employees? So I think what Anthea is saying is basically, okay, you're remote first, remote only. The assumption is that you're going to deal with pandemic better than anybody else. But what ways in which the pandemic has impacted you, which has surprised you? Mark, we're going to go with you on this one. Go.
Yeah, you need to unmute me. So I haven't seen a huge impact on the hiring phase, right? You see it on the customer base, you see it in revenue, those kind of things. All those kind of things changed a little bit due to COVID. But actually, it became easier for us to hire because a lot of people are open for remote, feel more comfortable for remote. So in hiring, honestly, I only see positive feedback at the moment.
Yep, very, very good. Okay, we're going to just rattle through these because we've only got a couple of minutes left. There's only 2 more questions, so let's go through them. Let me just say I've done answering that. Okay, we've got a question here from Mandy Pham. Mandy's saying, do you provide a toolkit for new hires on effective remote work resources? I think the answer is already yes. We've already shared the Gitlab stuff, right? So hopefully, Mandy, just check the links on the chat screen. You should be able to have that. And finally, we've got a great question from Florian Feitinger. I hope I've got your name also correct, Florian. What is the most important ritual for team bonding? I guess this in a remote context. So let's everyone give this one a shot. Adam, do you want to take this one first? I mean, in your view, being CEO of a business, kind of distributed working, have you thought about, is there a ritual or some sort of process that would help a remote person on board and kind of a bond with the team in a way, to replicate what we used to do on site?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the first important thing is you have a daily stand-up. You have a daily stand-up at 9 o'clock every morning, 9 o'clock till 9:15. Really, same time every day, so you can build up some routine and everybody knows when it's happening. And I'm sure there's a lot of others, but that's one that I think is really useful.
Yeah, fantastic. How about you, Anastasia? Most important ritual for onboarding new people in a remote setting?
So yeah, I would agree with everything that is said already. So just making sure that you pay attention to informal connections. And perhaps one thing that might surprise you is that at Gitlab, we believe that nothing can replace a real face-to-face meeting in person. So that's why once in 9 months, we gather all the team members together in one place for Gitlab Contribute, because that's important just to see that actually like all your coworkers, they at least exist, like they're real people. So yeah, that's how we make sure that we give them opportunity to make these connections and to establish these bonds.
That must be a really exciting moment, actually, because suddenly you will meet people that you probably know, and well. I mean, when social media first arrived, one of the big shocks for me was that actually I did feel it was possible to make genuine relationships with people that you might not have met in person, and you didn't know them. And when you did meet them, it was a very exciting moment, and it was great to further embed that. So that's a great thing to say. Okay, final one to you, Mark. Most important ritual for team bonding and remote setup.
So we have alternating meetings. So one-on-ones with your manager, one-on-ones with the team, and one-on-one with the teammates. Always on a base of when you want to, right? So nothing is pushed. The only thing where we don't do is daily stand-ups, because while it works well if the whole company is located in the same time zone, when you start distributed, that's just not possible. So we basically alternate them over friendly time zones for Asia, US, and EMEA, and everybody stays up a little bit later at one moment. And that creates a bonding feeling as well. So if we have a meeting with EMEA and US time zones, the APJ will stay up a little bit later, right? And that kind of creates a inclusiveness. And that's what we do every time. So we basically switch them over and over.
Yeah, and also that little bit of sacrifice is also recognized. I feel it's a little bit of extra, and then people will want to do the same the next time around. There's actually a lot of anthropology going on here, and I think we're all now need to put our kind of anthropology hats on to really study how team bonds are made, how are bonds made, how is a relationship formed, how are hierarchies effective, when do we know it's not effective, when do we actually do need to do in person, and all the rest of it. Anyway, that's about it. We are over time, folks. So thank you very much to everyone who joined us today. So Mark Deubel, thank you very much for being with us once more. Anastasia, I'm not going to try your name again because I want to stick on the first effort. I thought I was pretty good. Anastasia, thank you very much. We'll definitely get you back on the show. Adam, thanks for being co-pilot as usual. Everyone listening on Crowdcast, LinkedIn, Facebook Live, Periscope, and everywhere else, thank you for watching Brainfood Live. Remember to follow the channel if you like this kind of content. And we'll be back next week with another awesome show. I think we're talking about how TA can secure budget in times of crisis. So is it possible for TA to go to the CEO and say, I need this new thing? Whether it's people, technology, process, whatever, how do you actually create the business case for budget when everyone else is thinking we need to be defensive? Jerome Turning is going to join us for that. I hope Lisa Scales also will join us for that as well. It should be a fantastic show. Make sure you register for it. And thank you finally to our sponsors this week. It is Video My Job. If you are looking for a product that can really help bring your company message to people via video, Video My Job is really the easiest solution that you can try, I think, on the market. It's a fantastic tool. It's on your mobile device. Get a branded video with you and your team, and it will basically help you connect with people in the remote world. Okay, that's about it, everybody. Welcome. Well, not welcome, but have a good weekend. I will see you next week.
Mark really looks like he's going out on a manhunt there.
I don't know what he's doing, but he was getting shooed off from the park. So I wonder whether he was illegally broadcasting or something. I don't know what the laws are.
I think he's gone out with a crossbow. By the way, he's literally going on a manhunt.
There's a new film that does this, isn't there? Isn't there one with one of the Helmsworth brothers? Anyway, he's like a hunted individual and the paid for sport. You know what? I think Mark's a solid guy. I definitely don't think he's a serial killer. I definitely don't think he's anybody interested in that. But yeah, maybe.
Can I just say one quick thing that we didn't get to earlier when we were talking about that guy's tweets? There was one thing, the tweet that guy Chris Hurd put that just really blew my mind the most.
Yep.
Was where he said this is going to be a bonanza for private equity firms because they can go and buy companies, and the first thing and with one vision, we'll make this a remote company within 2 years, and then we will flog it as a massively more profitable enterprise. That is really clear. That is going to happen.
That's actually something I hadn't thought about, but yeah, there's money to be made in classic PE way, right? Strip out the cost, and man, what is more costly than a really expensive piece of real estate that's now sitting empty? By the way, I also want to talk at some point, I'll get your thoughts on this, Adam, but maybe it's worth just sort of having a quick chat with you now about the government, UK government, kind of just ringing the bell and saying, hey, everybody, back to the office. I don't know whether you saw the headlines today, but it was like, right, you've got a patriotic duty to go back to the office, because if you don't do that, then the sandwich shop next to you is going to go bust, which is true. But it strikes me that totally fails to see the positive benefits of remote working, particularly in decentralizing and leveling up the regions. I mean, one of the reasons why London is massively inflated in terms of its economic power, because everyone has to be here in order to do deals, move their career faster, get more opportunities, etc., etc. So if the Tories were all about reversing this and leveling up, you've got to promote remote. You can't say, back to the office.
They're not, because they all own property in London, and they've got millions of personal wealth in pension funds that own Canary Wharf. Stop being political, Adam, but it's the truth.
It is the truth. You can't take away personal agenda, sadly enough. By the way, as a final point, you want to be political. Hung Lee's world, if you want to be a politician, you need to treat it like a monastic vow. I would have politicians literally swear and just simply swear of our poverty, never to ever own a single possession ever again. And it should be something that they do out of duty for the country, and they will get any kind of service they need, food, board, sorted out, all the rest of it, but they'll never accumulate wealth. And that should be a hard rule, because there's no other way in which we're going to separate the agenda of acquisition at a personal level from the issue of power. And by the way, I think people would do this because
including after leaving government.
Yeah, it's a vocation.
What about if they've already built wealth?
Give it up.
You're limiting the talent pool, mate.
We are setting a high, but it's also called setting a bar, a moral bar for public office. I think we should do that.
I've been at a lot of like local council meetings, and I've seen the people that volunteer to do things, and you wouldn't have them trying to run your country.
No, but that's not what I'm talking about, man. I mean, those people are not monastic in any way. I'm talking about people who have this higher value system, and there are out there. People I think would do it. And it's a big litmus test, actually, as to your true motivation. Because what we have right now in the democratic system, and in fact any system that isn't like hereditary, is that you get grifters. Grifters that want to come in and grift, and they see this as just a greasy pole to climb, and it's a disgrace. And there's no wonder that we have all kinds of horrendous corruption, poor services, all the rest of that. That cannot be solved. We have to basically divorce the personal agenda with the public office.
I like the sentiment, but I'm not sure it could be quite as hardline as you said. So like Tony Blair could never go and do his £1 million a speech type gigs.
No. And by the way, if you want to join Hung Lee's dystopia, I'm going to set up a GoFundMe. No, I'm not. All right, listen, that's it. Have a good weekend, everybody. We'll catch you later.
Bye.